Last time we were taking a look at the rise of suburban culture and the interstates and the American dream, this development of the mindset that consumerism is a civic duty, and the idea of buying things means that you have more worth than if you didn't buy things. And the more you're able to buy things, the more value you have. And how this mindset of the American dream plays into the development of this suburban culture. I wanted to talk about this idea of the cultural sameness and this how this leads into this countercultural movement. I wanted to start by playing a song for you by Melvina Reynolds called "Little Boxes" that really helps to illustrate suburban culture.
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's a pink one and a green one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. And the people in the houses all went to the university where they were put in boxes and they came out all the same. And there's doctors and lawyers and business executives, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same. And they all play on the golf course and drink their martinis dry, and they all have pretty children, and the children go to school, and the children go to summer camp, and then to the university where they are put in boxes, and they come out all the same. And the boys go into business and marry and raise a family in boxes made of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same. There's a pink one and a green one and a blue one and a yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky and they all look just the same.
And this song does a good job of casting a critical glance at this culture that we seem to live in, where we're all kind of living in. You take a look at the suburbs, a lot of the houses all look the same, and all of the if you talk to people, a lot of people have the same type of values, the same type of view, the same type of dreams, and they all come out just the same. They all go to the university, and they all kind of are shaped just the same. And there's a lack of individuality. There's a lack of diversity, and that's going to be a major problem in the 1950s and beyond as we seek to thwart communism through capitalism and trying to defeat the enemy by being good consumers and being all the same, right? And how differences are viewed as negative. Just to talk a little bit more about this, I wanted to examine this idea of the cultural sameness in the 1950s. And here you see two images. One image on the right is just people going to the movies, and they all look identical, right? They're all wearing the same kind of clothes. They're all their hair looks all the same. They're all kind of just kind of doing the same things, and that's kind of this suburban 1950s and beyond kind of culture. On the left-hand side, you see a meeting at IBM, and according to legend, I don't know how true this is, but according to legend, everyone at IBM had to wear the same there's kind of a suit, a nice conservative suit with a dark tie and a white shirt. And one day, someone that was working for IBM showed up in, rather than a white shirt, a light blue one. And by the end of the day, the person was let go, is given his pink slip, and he had to clean out his desk, and he was gone. And the idea for this, right, is that everyone has to look identical. And if you look identical, then you can think identical. This is kind of this idea of herd behavior. If you're doing all the same, then you're thinking all the same, you're behaving all the same. Therefore, what, right? I want you to think about what's the effect. To what end does that happen? Uh, the unknown citizen plays into this. I had you read through this. I wanted to kind of read through it with you just to kind of think about some of the main ideas that about this unknown citizen. And this is as it says in parentheses here, this is a marble monument is erected by the state. And so we have to think about who is celebrating this unknown citizen and why is this entity here, it's the state, celebrating this particular unknown citizen, right? So as we go through this, I want you to think about what is admirable about the unknown citizen. Is he admirable or is he not admirable, right? In what ways do we can we say that he does things that we can admire? What ways is he just not worthy of any praise? He was found by the Bureau of Statistics to be one against one whom there was no official complaint. And all reports on his conduct agree that in modern sense of the old-fashioned word, he was a saint. For in everything he did, he served the greater community. Except for war, till the day he retired, he worked in a factory and never got fired, but satisfied his employers, Fudge Motors, Inc. Yet he wasn't a scab or odd in his views, for his union reports that he paid his dues. Our report on his union shows it was sound, and our social psychology workers found that he was popular with his mates and liked to drink. The press are convinced that he bought a paper every day, and that his reactions to advertisements were normal in every way. Policies taken out in his name prove that he was fully insured, and his health card shows he was once in the hospital but left it cured. Both producers, research, and high-grade living declare he was fully sensible to the advantages in the installment plan, and had everything necessary to the modern man. A phonograph, a radio, a card, and a Frigidaire. Our researchers into public opinion are content that he held the proper opinions for the time of year. When there was peace, he was for peace. When there was war, he went. He was married and added 5 children to the population, which our eugenists say is the right number for a parent of his generation. And our teachers report that he never interfered with their education. Was he free? Was he happy? The question is absurd. If had anything been wrong, we should certainly have heard. Right? So as we think about this, right, what does he do that makes him admirable? What is it that the state admires about him? How does this fit in with the idea of suburban culture? How does this fit in with Reynolds's boxes of ticky-tacky, right? How does this kind of fit in with this idea of homogeny and being the same? Right? What are they, celebrating? And then we have to think about what information do we know and what information do we not know? Where does this information come from? Right? What sources is the state citing as proof that he is admirable? And then we have to think about the opposite of that. What don't we really know about him? Right? One thing that we don't know is his name. Why? Right? The state seems to think that it's not important to know his name. Why would the state think that his name is not important? Why is the state celebrating? Why as we think about this idea of homogeny and sameness? And I want to take a look at a couple other ideas. One is Edward Scissorhands. Some of you probably have seen this, but it's a critical look. Tim Burton has a critical look at suburban culture. And his film has kind of a nostalgic feel, like it's looking back in the 1960s, even though it's supposed to take place in contemporary 1990s. It has that kind of feel to it, the 1960s. And so what we have is a stranger comes to a small suburban town and disrupts the regular flow of life in this homogenous community. I just wanted to show you the preview to this particular film. I recommend it. It's really good.
This is some huge house, isn't it? Hello? Why are you hiding back there? You Just come home with me. I just saw the strange vibe over on Peg. Did you get a good look at it? Hi!
Oh, that's a handshake we got there, Ed.
Ken, this is Edward. He's gonna live with us.
Well, this must be quite a change for you, right, Ed? Those things are cool.
Can I bring the show and tell on Monday?
He's a highly imaginative character. It seems clear that his awareness of what we call reality is radically underdeveloped.
Eddie, you take my very breath away. Do you have a girlfriend?
Is there some special lady in your life?
Boy, Dr. Stuart Jill. Just a scratch. The power of Satan is in him. I can feel it.
All along, I thought in my gut there was something wrong with him.
From Tim Burton comes the most incredible tale of a most unusual character. Edward Scissorhands.
Me. I can't.
Kind of an interesting film. It's a film where Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder met, and then they had like a kind of a brief whirlwind romance. But taking a look at this particular film, what we see here is initially this outsider. He kind of comes into this homogenous suburban boxes made out of ticky-tacky kind of culture, where he's initially celebrated. He's kind of like, oh, he's kind of a novelty, kind of different. But then as soon as something goes wrong, he's the one that's blamed, right? Because everything was fine before he came to town, so therefore he must be to blame. And that's kind of the mindset that we see with this homogenous kind of culture that we tend to live in, is that if people don't look the same or act the same or be the same, then we tend to look down upon them, or to blame them, or to cast them in a negative light. And we have to be cautious of that, right? But that seems to be the default, and trying to struggle against that. I wanted to show you one more clip that demonstrates kind of another critical look at suburban culture and this idea of sameness. This is The Truman Show, and some of you probably have watched it. It's a good one. I recommend it. But what happens, and this kind of pertains a little bit to today in reality TV. Unbeknownst to Truman, he is the star of a reality TV show. However, things start to go awry when he notices some abnormalities that cause him to question his reality. And so again, this is kind of similar to Inception, right? What is reality? How do we know what's really real and what's kind of, imposed real, or what's kind of created fake around us? And so Truman is the star from birth of this reality TV show, and everyone kind of watches his life, and then everyone within that Truman knows is an actor on this reality show. I just want to show you a quick clip from this.
I'm ready to go now. Why wait? Early bird gathers no moss. Rolling stone catches the worm, right? Where shall we go?
So Truman here starts to recognize that there's some weird things going on, and he believes that he's actually being watched. And so he's starting to uncover the truth. So he's trying to do things that are abnormal to try to break up the monotony. Let's see what happens.
What about Atlantic City?
Wait again.
That's right, I do know.
So why would you want to go there?
Because I never have. That's why people go places. Me too. Lots of return. Beautifully synchronized, don't you agree?
You're blaming me for the traffic?
Did I?
Let's go home.
Hero. We could be stuck here for hours. We could be like this all the way to Atlantic City. Let's go back. I'm sorry. I don't know what got into me.
Please slow down.
Yes, I can. I changed my mind. What's New Orleans like this time of year?
Mardi Gras.
Carol? Hello?
No cars. Magic.
You're not right ahead. You want to destroy yourself? Do it on your own.
So what we see in here is he's breaking up the monotony. Is if you're living in a homogenous culture where everything has to be the same, look the same, then any type of difference, people are not going to be able to handle it very well. And so he's kind of picking on this, even though it's mainly a reality TV show that he's on. It's actually kind of a larger social commentary on how we expect things to be the same, and we don't like things that deviate from the norm. Taking a look at contribution to statistics, I wanted to examine this and how we, tend to just focus on numbers, and how when we just only focus on numbers, we're missing the humanity. And so the question in the 1950s and 60s starts to ask, when we focus on this homogenous culture and everyone being the same and everyone buying, the same white picket fence with a house and the green yard, and looking the same, wanting the washing machine, wanting everything to be exactly the same. When we focus on this, we lose our humanity. All right, and we started to see that in the unknown citizen, and this kind of drives that point home. 100 people, those who always know better. 52 doubting every step. Nearly all the rest. Glad to lend a hand if it doesn't take too long. As high as 49. Always good because they can't be otherwise. 4. Well, maybe 5. Able to admire without envy, 18. Suffering illusions induced by fleeting youth, 60, give or take a few. Not to be taken lightly, 44. Living in constant fear of something or someone or something, 77. Capable of happiness, 20. Something tops. Harmless singly, savage in crowds, half at least. Cruel when forced by circumstance. Better not to know even ballpark figures. Wise after the fact, just a couple more than wise before. Taking only things from life, 30. I wish I were wrong. Hunched in pain, no flashlight in the dark, 83. Sooner or later righteous, 35, which is a lot. Righteous and understanding, 3. Worthy of compassion, 99. Mortal, 100 out of 100. Thus far, this figure still remains unchanged. So, thinking about how we tend to divide people up into boxes, to think about them in certain ways rather than seeing people as individuals. Let's take a look at counterculture and this movement that happens in the 1950s and 60s. What happens is that people were living in this kind of suburban mindset with this homogenous kind of culture. People felt suffocated, particularly the rising teens. This new generation, they felt suffocated by having to look the same, have the same haircut, wear the same clothes, be the same, act the same. They wanted to be different. And J.D. Salinger, some of you may have read this in high school, his Catcher in Rye. This really becomes the first kind of counterculture, first teen book, right? Just a kind of a brief synopsis that I give of the book. Holden Caulfield is a New York teenager who was expelled from boarding school due to his poor grades. He then meanders through the city, encountering friends, former teachers, as well as more seedy elements of urban life. However, he does not fit in with any of these social circles. The novel is heralded as one of the greatest books of the 20th century because of its elaborate detail on the darker side of teen psyche, which was just beginning to be starting to be studied in the 1950s. Being disenchanted, disgruntled, angry, misunderstood, isolated. Now we take all of that kind of as for granted. We just think that's the teen years, but this was all kind of new in the 1950s. And the awkwardness of living between childhood and adulthood. It ties into the idea of the challenges of not fitting in to the larger culture, and this culture that's pushing everyone to be uniform. Jack Kerouac kind of builds upon this with his On the Road in 1957, this kind of counterculture movement. Kerouac wrote this novel on a continuous scroll, which was about 120 feet, which you see at the bottom, right? You see the continuous scroll at the bottom. that he wrote and taped together over 3 weeks in April 1951. So that's a pretty short amount of time to write one of the greatest books of the 20th century. It is semi-autobiographical and details his life as a drifter. Sal Paradise is the actual character, kind of he takes on a pseudonym in the novel, who does not fit in with the rigidity of post-war American culture and looks for a spiritual awakening and inspiration. It is regarded as one of the greatest works of American fiction for its raw prose and style. And so what we have is Sal Paradise travels on the interstates. We talked about the interstates and just kind of goes from town to town trying to find himself. In the midst of, everyone telling you what you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do, he's actually trying to find out who he is and what does that mean, right? And so it's kind of interesting that society tries to tell us what we should be, what we should study, what jobs we should have, who we should marry, right? What we should be doing, all right? And little often, or very few chances do we have that actually think about who we actually are, right? How we're individuals rather than this collective body. We focus more on this herd mindset and conformity. Another part of the counterculture is films. Films kind of taps into this growing culture with Salinger's Catcher in the Rye and Kerouac's On the Road, with Marlon Brando and James Dean. These kind of become the big figures of that are the measurement of this counterculture, the teens' rebellion. I want to take a look at a couple of films that demonstrate this. The first one is The Wild One, which is the first kind of counterculture biker kind of movie. And here you see Marlon Brando as the ultimate tough guy, wearing his leather jacket, surrounded by his gang. Very different from the 1950s suburban culture where you're supposed to wear a white shirt and tie and a sports jacket and slacks.
I love you, Johnny. I've been looking for you in every ditch in Fresno to here, hoping you was dead.
You was giving him the needle, and your boyfriend don't go for that.
You've been having yourself a time, huh, Johnny? You do look pale. You been taking care of yourself? You been staying out too late at night.
It's about breaking the rules, not following the customs of the day, about following your own path. And it was considered rebellious to follow your own path. You start to fight, and we'll kind of leave off with that. You can only imagine what ensues. This is another one. This one kind of launched James Dean's career, A Rebel Without a Cause, where he plays a teenager who is suffocated by his family, and so he rebels. And so you're going to see his family interaction here, as he's been arrested for being drunk. He's taken to the police station. His parents are coming to pick him up.
How about you, Jim? Got anything to say for yourself?
Not interested, huh?
Can't you answer? What's the matter with you anyhow?
He's just loaded, honey.
I was talking to Jim.
Well, I'd like to just explain. You see, we just moved here, you understand, and the kid hasn't got any friends, you understand, and we moved into it. Will you hold it, Jim?
Tell him, man, why we moved here.
Will you hold it?
You can't protect me.
Do you mind if I try? Do you have to slam the door in my face? I'm trying to get to him. What happened? Don't I buy you everything you want? A bicycle? You get a bicycle. A car?
You buy me many things.
No. Well, not just buy. We give you love and affection, don't we? Well, then what is it? Was it because we went to that party? Well, you know what kind of drunken brawls those kind of parties turn into. It's not a place for kids.
A minute ago, you said you didn't care if he drinks.
He said a little drink.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
That's a fine way to behave.
Well, you know who he takes after.
Oh!
So we see within this, right, the kind of the troubled home life of a teen, the awkwardness but between being an adult and a child, right? You're neither a child nor an adult. You're kind of somewhere in between, trying to find yourself, but also the struggle of trying to find your own individuality in a society that tries to tell you who you are and what you're supposed to do. And you see that kind of resistance, that rebellion against that. And so this movement kind of catches on. Teens really like this idea of not being told what to think, what to do, how to behave, and kind of finding your own way. And so Andy Warhol, who is part of this pop culture movement, always sees what is ultra popular, and he starts to depict images. Here we see Marlon Brando from The Wild One, and he mass produces this image. But here we see art meeting consumer culture, meeting pop culture, meeting counterculture, meeting teen culture, all kind of coming together in this kind of interesting intersection. And here we see his representation of a rebel without a cause, right? So this idea of not really fitting in and trying to push against the norm, right? Wanted to leave off by taking a look at another huge part of the counter culture, and that is Elvis Presley. And this is the performance that he does on the Milton Berle show, where he shakes his hips, and because he shakes his hips, people were completely offended. They felt that it was too gratuitous, and they nicknamed him Elvis the Pelvis. That was kind of a derogatory nickname, and kind of shows the mindset, this kind of strict, culture of how you're supposed to act, kind of a regimented mindset. So this was considered scandalous. And after this performance, they only shot Elvis from the shoulders up. But that's kind of the strictness of this 1950s culture.
The critics jumped all over me for it. I still can't figure out what got them so riled.
Here we see some reaction.
It's shocking. I watched him gyrate his legs and swivel his hips. And our parent-teachers group feels he should not be on television.
We've set up a 20-man committee to do away with this vulgar, animalistic, nigger rock and roll bar. Our committee will check with restaurant owners and the cafes to see what Presley records is on their machines, and then ask them to do away with it.
So we see, I mean, it's kind of a weird kind of comment that we see there, but what we see is this very suffocating culture, and the fact that it's so strict and so restrictive that people want to resist against this, and that's where the counterculture movement starts to come in. And of course, the reigning culture, the dominant culture, never likes anything new or diverse coming in, and so it sees as a threat. And that's what we see with these last couple of comments, is they feel threatened by it. But not everybody sees that, right? Sees it that way. They start to see it as a way as a release from being completely repressed. This is a way of people feeling that their way of life, their identity is being strictly forced upon them. They feel like they don't have any agency in this particular kind of culture, and they're trying to find themselves, and that's the counterculture movement.